Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to the iPad Podcast. This is Lex at MacsFuture.com. This is episode 83, and it's recorded on December 5th, 2011, a Monday. I usually record on Sundays, but today I'm recording on Monday. So remember, this is a chit-chat-free podcast. Any positive feedback in the iTunes Store or on YouTube or on Blip TV would be greatly appreciated. Also, check me out on Google+. Thank you. Okay, speculation is rampant that Apple is developing a real Apple TV. On MacRumors this week, on November 30th, Wednesday, November 30th of this past week, MacRumors reported on a report from Piper Jaffray analyst Gene Munster, who has long been one of the advocates of Apple-branded television set, that there will be such a launch coming in the second half of next year. And, the idea being that it would be a full-fledged television set, just not just a little teeny box that connects to a TV set, and that it will be twice the current pricing of a regular TV, and it will have content. So what do you think about that? Does that make sense? Well, I wrote a blog post about it, so let's discuss it. There has been a lot of speculation that Apple will finally release an Apple TV. Now, by that I mean a real television, one with a big screen. When I refer to the real big Apple TV, I usually refer to it as Apple Space TV, but for the current one, I just call it Apple TV with no space in between. People have wondered how it will happen. How can Apple sell such a television and make a hefty profit when profits in TV sales are razor thin? Now, a couple of days ago, I got a call from one of my podcast listeners named Alex, who left me a voicemail. He asked what I thought about how Apple will implement the real Apple TV. He queried whether Apple will truly get content on it that will make it a pure internet-based television. He also queried whether it makes sense for Apple to purchase Netflix for content now that Netflix is so slow. The answer is the real Apple TV is already here. It is in your hands. It is the iPad and Apple's AirPlay technology. Let me explain. Alex's voicemail was timely, as all day long I was thinking of a Eureka Moment. You see, more and more I have been thinking of cutting the cord. That term today on the internet is associated with getting rid of your traditional cable television service and going internet for media content. I've been seriously thinking of doing that recently, as my Time Warner cable service is expensive, and more I find myself not watching regular television. Now, I also have a family, a wife and kids, and I have to be responsible and think of their interests before cutting the cord. My wife has generally been supportive about cutting the cord. She watches some TV but thinks we can survive without regular cable TV access. My kids are too young to be consulted. Frankly, my kids really don't understand the difference between live TV, DVR TV, Apple TV, iPad streaming TV, Netflix TV, etc. You get it. I currently pay about $175 per month to Time Warner Cable. That monthly expense gets me high-speed internet, about $43 of that amount, and 2 cable boxes with DVR service, plus HBO and a minor sports package. I can knock off about $50 per month if I get rid of one cable box, the one in the living room. I explored what would take its place. The iPad. I have a DVD player and Apple TV hooked up to the plasma TV in the living room in addition to the cable box. But if I get rid of the cable box, it is the iPad which will be the real source of TV programming for the TV in the living room. That is because the iPad currently has great video and movie apps for the iPad, which through AirPlay or a cable connection play very well on the plasma TV. The key thing is AirPlay. AirPlay is amazing, and currently you can get your TV to have AirPlay if you hook up a little Apple TV box to it. If you don't know what AirPlay is, let me explain. You hook up a little Apple TV box to your big screen TV through a cable HDMI connection. Your little Apple TV box is then connected to the internet by Wi-Fi or Ethernet connection to your router. Then the real magic happens. With AirPlay enabled on the Apple TV, you can have your videos sent wirelessly from your iOS device, whether it's an iPad, iPhone, or iPod Touch, as long as your iOS device is on the same home network as the Apple TV. All you do is find a video on your iOS device and then find the AirPlay icon. It looks like a big screen TV outline with a little white triangle in it, and which is really an arrow saying send this video to your big TV. If you have an iPad 2 or an iPhone 4S, you can also turn on device mirroring, and everything on your iPad 2 or iPhone 4S, not just videos, will be seen on your big screen TV. So it struck me. The iOS devices with AirPlay are already the ideal real Apple TV we have been waiting for. The current Apple TV has content on it, but the content on the Apple TV is nothing compared to the video content on the iPad or other iOS devices. That is because the Apple TV is currently limited to just a few apps like Netflix, iTunes, YouTube, etc. Developers can't release apps for the Apple TV. There is no App Store for the Apple TV, but if you have an iOS device, particularly an iPhone 4S or iPad 2, who cares about apps on the Apple TV? Because through Apple AirPlay, your Apple TV has all the apps on the iPhone 4S or iPad 2, and the content you can get on your big screen through AirPlay is amazing. For example, if I keep the cable box in the bedroom, the Time Warner iPad app will stream many TV programs from Time Warner's roster of channels through the internet. Unfortunately, the app only works as long as I have one cable box. At the very least, this cable app allows you to reduce the number of cable boxes you have. Other iPad apps provide content without any qualifications and all allow you to go completely free of regular TV, i.e. no cable box or satellite box. Just like the Apple TV on your iPad or other iOS device, you have YouTube, iTunes, Netflix. But you also have apps that provide TV-like streaming video 24 hours a day. For example, for news, I can watch the Bloomberg TV Plus app or the Al Jazeera Live apps, both of which have tremendous coverage. NBC and ABC also have apps that let you see the nightly news on demand, as well as other network content. You also have the Boxy app, which gives you interesting video content, but allows you to select any video content on your computer. Then there are cool apps like Squirrel that let you find all sorts of cool videos on the internet, and they are organized by topics like technology, sports, news, etc. Then there are content-specific apps like the TED app, which has all the great TED video speeches. For kids, there are great cartoon apps like the PBS Kids or the Cartoon Network app. Of course, Netflix has huge amounts of kids-related content, including many of the kids' shows from TV. And the best part of all of this AirPlay and wireless mirroring stuff is that it turns your iPad or other iOS device into the ultimate remote. It's super easy to find content and search content on your iOS devices. It is much easier than using the little click remote with the Apple TV, where you have to select letters individually. It is also better than the remote app for iOS, which allows you to control an Apple TV. So the Eureka Moment is that all Apple needs to do is build a big TV that has AirPlay built into it. Moreover, what I would like is a big TV that has the ability to connect to regular cable TV or satellite box if you want that service. I would also like it if when you send an iPad or iPhone video by AirPlay, that AirPlay immediately switches the TV automatically from the TV or satellite service to the AirPlay service. Right now, with an Apple TV connected to a big TV, you have to manually change a big TV from the input for the cable or satellite input to the Apple TV input. What I would like is for a TV to sense when you send a video over by AirPlay and automatically switch the input to the AirPlay stream from the iOS device. So what about having big Apple TV have a built-in Apple TV like the one we have now that is external. Well, what would be the benefit of that? Alex in his voicemail asks, how will Apple secure the content for an Apple TV? A big one. Right now, the problem with the regular Apple TV that is out now is that it has limited content as it has limited apps. The current Apple TV has YouTube, iTunes, Netflix, MLB baseball during the season, NBA baseball during the season, but what it doesn't have are the plethora of video and content apps on the iOS devices like the iPad and iPhone. Now, I suppose Apple could add more content to the Apple TV embedded in a large Apple TV. But if Apple did that, they need to really soup up and expand the remote app on the iOS devices to be the great remote control for the embedded Apple TV. Frankly, controlling the content from the iOS device and streaming apps from the iOS devices is a great remote TV experience. You have great control over finding content to play on your big TV. I put the TV apps that I like into a dedicated TV folder I put in the dock of my iPad. It is really easy to find my favorite video apps. What about Siri? Some speculate that Apple will make a great remote for the big real Apple TV that works with Siri. But folks, all Apple has to do is allow Siri on the iOS devices to work with the video apps that are already there. What if you could say, Siri, launch the Netflix app. Siri, I launched the Netflix app. Me, what is my cue? Siri, Pulp Fiction, The Godfather, Part 1, etc. Me says, play Pulp Fiction. Siri says, yes, sir. The point being, it will be really easy for Apple to expand Siri on the iPad and the iPhone to launch apps. Now, I suppose Apple could build a dedicated remote that has Siri on it. Most likely, such a remote would be like a dumbed-down limited iPod Touch that has dedicated TV remote functions. It will have no real buttons, rather just virtual screen buttons. It may have also limited viewing of the content. Frankly, I like the iPad, iPhone, and iPod Touch today with AirPlay as the ultimate remote. You can control the video and see the video right up close. This is the ultimate remote experience. Now, I suppose Apple will release a dumbed-down iPod Touch-like remote just because some people don't have an iPad, iPhone, or iPod Touch. And because of that, Apple may support apps and other content on an embedded Apple TV. There may be some utility in that. It might make gaming more robust to have games running from the Apple TV controlled by the iPad or iPhone rather than running from an iPad or iPhone. But it is pretty robust now to run a game from the iPad and mirror it to the Apple TV. As for content, I think we are already there. The final straw for me, which will make it easy for me to cut my cable cord, is that the DirecTV NFL app, which allows you to stream NFL games to your iPad, works even if you don't have DirecTV account. DirecTV just makes you certify that you can't get DirecTV in your building. I guess the ideal would be that the NFL allows the streaming of its games without having any restrictions. It would also be great if Apple could secure content for the Apple TV or the iOS devices. But with so many apps with content appearing on the iOS devices, I don't know if Apple has to secure any content. Now, Alex in his voicemail queries whether Apple should purchase Netflix, as Netflix stock price has been falling heavily. I don't think Apple will do that for two reasons. First, I imagine that Netflix contracts with the content providers are limited and don't allow someone acquiring Netflix to have the same rights to the content. Similarly, Netflix doesn't have any long-term content rights to the movies and TV shows that it has on its streaming services. Apple doesn't have to purchase Netflix. It is already on the Apple TV and also on the iOS device. Frankly, Netflix is in deep trouble because other internet content providers like Google, Amazon, and Apple can undercut Netflix and secure content from movie and TV producers. Remember, Netflix became big because it was a good deal and delivered DVDs. Netflix doesn't have unique infrastructure in delivering streaming content. Google, Amazon, and Apple have the resources to do the same thing and better if they want. In fact, Google's YouTube is already offering cheap or free movies. Netflix is frankly doomed no matter how much we love it. Netflix will be outbid by Google Amazon and Apple in bidding on the rights to content. Netflix doesn't sell anything like ads, which Google does, other products, which Amazon does, or devices, which Apple does, to justify the low price Netflix charges. Now, I suppose Apple could launch a subscription service for movie and TV content from iTunes. Right now, Netflix is a better deal than iTunes if you watch a lot of content, as iTunes is an a la carte service, while Netflix is an $8 per month service. I think Apple can just offer a $10 monthly streaming service for movies and TV, and it will make the Apple TV a big hit. But frankly, if Apple does make a big Apple TV with AirPlay built in it, I will be very happy. Really, that is all I need to cut the cord. So here is my conclusion. Apple can launch a big, real Apple TV by just having AirPlay built into it. Apple could embed an Apple TV into such a TV like the one that exists today. Apple could allow apps to run on the big Apple TV itself. But frankly, AirPlay is so good that is just gravy. Finally, Apple should not buy Netflix. Instead, Apple should increase the content in iTunes and allow a subscription service. Now, we've been talking about the Apple TV and the iPad, but there was a big announcement, I guess either Sunday night or today on December 5th, regarding Microsoft and what Microsoft could be doing in the TV space. In particular, Microsoft announced a major upgrade to the Xbox. The Xbox, for a long time, has been one of its best-selling devices that you put near the TV. It's a gaming device, but it also can run other content. And VentureBeat has an article entitled Microsoft Upgrades Xbox Live with 40 entertainment services like live TV and Kinect voice control. So the big thing here is that, Kinect is that interactive device you connect to the Xbox where you can move your hands around and control games and other content on the Xbox. Well, it also has voice control. So it looks like Microsoft's going to get in the game of competing with Siri with voice recognition. And clearly voice recognition is going to be a big part of how to control computer-like devices. But the other thing, so one big announcement is you're going to be able to control this Xbox Live with voice control, but also have access to all sorts of great video content. VentureBeat says the update is one of the biggest in the past 5 years for the Xbox because Microsoft is trying to improve the experience of watching TV. So this update is going to go live on the Xbox for Xbox Live users tomorrow, and it's going to greatly multiply the options for viewing content. It's going to have all sorts of cool stuff. So I wonder if Apple is really concerned about this, and if maybe then Apple will be forced to really add a lot of content to the Apple TV as well as through AirPlay and the iPad. So it says here you're also going to be able to use your voice to find the games, the movies, the TV shows, and the musics. And as the results come back, then you can choose the service that can best deliver the entertainment to you. And there'll be Bing integration, so you're going to be able to do searches. Among the services that are going to be added are Hulu Plus, Last.fm, Netflix, Zune Music, and then TV providers including AT&T Uverse TV in the United States, TELUS in Canada, Sky B in England, Canal Plus in France. And basically, these TV providers are going to allow you to stream channels, I guess, through the internet to your Xbox. So, to me, this is a huge play to compete with Apple in the television gaming space. So maybe what Apple will do, maybe Apple will make an Apple TV that's much more powerful and a better gaming device, and maybe Apple will then open it up to developers to release apps on the Apple TV, and then developers can make all sorts of interesting games that use the Apple TV to work with the iPhone and the iPad. But to do that, Apple's going to have to really make another model of the Apple TV that has a much more powerful processor. And, I think that's very, very possible. I'm actually tempted to get an Xbox myself just for this experience. The one thing that I don't like about the Xbox are the games are expensive. I mean, I've gotten used to cheap games on the iPad, cheap games on the iPhone. The most you spend is maybe $5 or $10, and the games on the Xbox are like, what, $30, $40. So we'll have to see, but this is a new twist in the battle for the TV space. Okay, so, the Kindle Fire came out a little while ago, and some people think that it's going to be the real competitor to the iPad. It's much smaller than the iPad. It's like 6 inches in diameter and change, and it costs only $200, which is a lot less than the $500 entry price to an iPad. That is, if you don't get a discount. So what does Apple think about it? Well, MacNN.com has a story out. Basically, they say that an analyst at JP Morgan spoke to Apple executives, and the Apple executives are not really worried. The article basically says JP Morgan analyst Mark Moskowitz said, according to his report, that Apple is not feeling the heat from the low-cost Amazon Kindle. This is what MacNN.com says. The report says in a private meeting with top Apple executives, including CEO Tim Cook and CFO Peter Oppenheimer, Moskowitz and others from the investment firm said the iPad maker expressed strong confidence in its position of strength in the tablet market. It goes on to say that iPhone sales were not losing momentum, and that iPhone 4S sales have not plateaued. Now, obviously Apple executives are not going to tell JP Morgan that they're worried about the Kindle Fire. And some people think, and I think maybe Apple does too, that if anything, the Kindle Fire could help sell more iPads. Now, how could that be? Well, some people might be hesitant to get an iPad because of the price of $500, but some people getting the Kindle Fire might be then exposed to tablets and touch tablets, and then might get more comfortable with the technology of touch computing, and then decide to graduate to a much better tablet device, that being the iPad. So in some sense, maybe the Kindle Fire will help sell more iPads. It also might help sell more iPads by bringing more attention to the tablet market. In other words, not just Apple selling it, but Kindle and Amazon selling it. So I think it's we'll have to see how this affects Apple. The question is, will Apple ever introduce a small touch device that competes with the Kindle Fire? In the past, I've pointed out this is a real problem for Apple because of pricing. Because if you look at it, the iPod Touch, which is really nothing more than an iPhone without a cell phone chip in it, the current entry price to an iPod Touch is $200, the same price as the Kindle Fire. So where is Apple going to price, let's say, a 6-inch iPad? At what entry price of, let's say, $300 or $350? In some ways, that'll cannibalize the iPod Touch market. The other problem is, Apple has an easy way to scale between the size of the iPhone and iPod Touch, and how is it going to then, scaling between that and double the pixels to the iPad screen. But how is Apple then going to support 3 screen sizes? So it is possible, but in any case, back to the story, Apple executives are not that worried about the Kindle Fire. At least that's what they're saying publicly. Now, for a long time, I've been talking about how the iPad hopefully will one day penetrate the enterprise market. That means in big business and in government agencies, all sorts of places. And there's been some hesitation because all the enterprise space is really a Microsoft shop. I mean, everybody uses the Microsoft Office suite. and Microsoft Exchange for Outlook, and it's been dominated by Microsoft. And I think one hesitation that a lot of IT departments have in enterprise is supporting the iPad is that it's an Apple device, and they're not used to Apple devices. But for users in the enterprise, I think one concern is the compatibility of the Microsoft Office suite of programs on Windows with non-Microsoft platforms. Because I remember, for years I've been using a Macintosh at home, and back in the 90s, whenever I would try to convince someone to switch to Macintosh, they would say, well, I've got these Word documents at work and I want to use them at home. And even though they were compatible, you could, import them into word processors that worked on the Macintosh. People were concerned about, were there technical errors. And, and then when Apple, at some point, Microsoft's Office on the Mac worked very well in terms of compatibility with Office on Windows, but people were still hesitant. But now there's something could change that, and the iPad could make really profound inroads into the enterprise market, because various websites have reported that Microsoft is preparing Microsoft for the iPad and that it's going to launch it next year. I'm reading about this in a website called Social Barrel, and it says that the Daily, which is I guess one of Rupert Murdoch's magazine, reports an article by a guy named Matt Hickey, and he says, according to sources, the tech giant Microsoft is actively working on adopting its popular software suite for Apple's tablet, with the iPad making up over 80% of the tablet market and millions of people worldwide using Office. That would mean big bucks for the tech giant based in Redmond. And some people may say, well, why would Microsoft do that? I mean, it's coming out with Windows 8 as a tablet device, but maybe Microsoft wants to hedge its bets. It might not be able to control the tablet operating market, and Apple has a huge segment of that tablet market. So maybe Microsoft figures, look, if we come out with Microsoft Office for iPad, all these businesses and government agencies will buy it and will make a fortune selling software on the iPad. So that could be the main reason. The other reason could be that, Microsoft might be less worried about sort of releasing apps on Apple's platform, viewing maybe Apple as less of a threat than Google. So maybe they used to be enemies, but maybe Microsoft and Apple are growing closer together. Who knows? Maybe there's a plan to replace Bing as the default search engine in iOS instead of Google. Anyways, I'm definitely looking forward to Microsoft Office on the iPad. In addition to Word and PowerPoint, I guess we'll see Excel on the iPad, and maybe even an Outlook email client. So that'll be interesting if it comes forth. Well, remember earlier this year when a lot of people were upset with Apple's subscription terms for magazines on the iPad? Well, it looks like actually now publishers are liking Apple's mechanism for distributing magazines and newspapers on the iPad. There is a story out on, it's in TUAW.com, and it's basically saying that the Hearst Magazines, which are a big magazine empire, are very happy with the iPad distribution. And the article is originally from Reuters, and basically they were quoting Hearst president David Carey, and I guess he gave a presentation somewhere, because he basically said that the company has 400,000 electronic subscribers so far and expects to have over 1 million subscribers at some point in 2012. And what I didn't know is that it says here that, while Apple gets 35% of subscription revenue, that's actually more than magazines traditionally get in their traditional newsstand distribution. publishers only keep 55% of the revenue, not 65%. So in some ways, the iPad as a distribution model is a better deal for publishers than, delivering through newsstands. It's also probably a better deal because the cost of delivering electronic newspapers is nothing compared to the cost of delivering paper newspapers. So the profits are going to go up if they can keep the same price. The big issue, according to this article, was that Apple initially said it wasn't going to share subscription information with the publishers. However, Apple modified that to say that subscribers could opt into sharing their information with the publisher. And according to this article, something like 65% of the iPad subscribers were allowing Hearst to have the information. And that's a figure he said was much higher than expected. So, maybe with the advent of the newsstand app, we'll have magazines and newspapers grow on the iPad. Well, with the release of the Kindle Fire, I expect that the competition in the ebook reader market, which is dominated by the Kindle and also by Barnes & Noble's Kobo, is going to be heated, and maybe it'll spill over onto the iPad. And there's a story out now on electronista.com on December 4th that Barnes & Noble's Kobo app is trying to spur on new readers through a free book program. And the article basically says that the Barnes & Noble is giving away on the Kobo free ebook once per month to new buyers. So it says Kobo is trying a unique strategy to lure readers away from Amazon, Apple, and Barnes & Noble. Oh, I'm sorry, no. Kobo is not the Barnes & Noble device. I think it was originally the Borders device or something. But anyways, Kobo Touch, it says anybody who buys a Kobo Touch and first uses it on or before March 31st gets a free ebook each month. And it basically says the publishers include Harvard Business Review Press, eReads, F&W Media, Gooseberry Patch, and New World City. And the book choices comes from Kobo itself and will include 2 F&W titles and 1 from Harvard. So, it's hard for me to keep track of all these devices. So the Kobo is something definitely different than the Nook and the Kindle Fire. It's a separate device, and basically says here Kobo faces an uphill battle in the U.S. without Borders' help. Remember, Kobo was the Borders bookstore device, and Kobo is now, I guess, unaffiliated with any bookstore since Borders went under. So I wonder if we're going to see other promotions like that where you start getting free books. Amazon allows you to lend ebooks for a limited time, I guess, to other people. I wonder if Apple's going to embrace anything like that on the iPad, where you can lend to anyone else on the iPad through the iBookstore books. So maybe they'll have an iBookstore promotion at some point. See, in some ways, competition is a great thing. And so there's definitely going to be competition in the ebook reading space. And so hopefully we'll see more, enhanced services coming to people who buy ebooks. Well, I'm starting to wonder how well Apple really polices its app store. Last week, maybe around the time of the last episode, I think I mentioned that Apple seemed to approve some remarkable app in the App Store that worked both on the iPad and the iPhone, and it was called iTether. And I think it was expensive. It was like $10 or $15, but it basically allowed you to tether through a USB connection to like a computer, your iPad or iPhone, and use the 3G connection to allow your computer to connect to the internet. And I was kind of stunned by this because AT&T and Verizon, they all charge a monthly fee to allow you to do such tethering. And, this app basically was allowing you to do it for free. And, for a long time I thought that Apple didn't allow such tethering apps. The only way you could get these tethering apps on an iPad or iPhone was to jailbreak the iPad. And I have to say, I did that with my iPad too back when it was jailbroken. I had a tethering app that was a jailbreak app, and that was actually a lot better. It allowed you to do Wi-Fi tethering, and also you could tether by USB, but the Wi-Fi tethering is key. Anyways, I'm just wondering, the company iTether claimed in tweets that Apple knew full well what it was doing when it approved the iTether app. But shortly after it went public, I didn't buy it, but within a matter of days, Apple pulled the app. Obviously because AT&T, Verizon, and even Sprint wouldn't like a free tethering app. So it makes me wonder, what happened? And I wouldn't be surprised if some, low-level reviewer for the App Store at Apple just didn't realize, what they were doing. Maybe they were going through some punch list of things that you can or cannot approve, and maybe iTether was just completely upfront with Apple, and some low-level reviewer just completely goofed. Given the number of apps that go through the App Store, I wouldn't be too surprised if apps sometimes slip through. We're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of apps that get updated, and all sorts of things happen in them. So anyways, it's an interesting story, and I wonder if other apps will sort of slip through the crack. Okay, let's get to some apps. One of the exciting things for the iPad is that gaming is getting better. And on December 3rd, one of the great, games in, whether on Xbox or PlayStation or the iPad, has come to the iPad, which is Infinity Blade 2 was finally released. Now, I'm not a big gamer. I like the race car games, but Infinity Blade's a huge brand, and it works with Game Center on the iPad, and it goes for just $6.99, and it's out. So the description sounds pretty good. I think the ratings are already good. This is how popular it is. The current version has 4,022 ratings, an average of 4 stars. So here's the description. Infinity Game description is: the God King has been defeated, an unlikely hero has emerged, and now you must discover the truth behind the secrets of Infinity Blade. The continuing journey of young Sirius unfolds as you delve deeper into the world of the deathless tyrants and their legion of titans. Can you unlock all the mysteries and successfully wield the power of the Infinity Blade in this timeless swordplay adventure of champions and villains? So basically it has a 3D world in it, and says explore beautiful and immersive environments that dynamically change over time during your travels, and venture to exotic locations such as the Asian-themed Sadi's Estate or the medieval-inspired Vault or Tiers, featuring multiple paths to explore. There's new styles of combat, and you can customize the characters, and it's just a pretty deep and rich app. Give you a size. It's massive in size. It's almost 1 gigabyte. It's 939 megabytes in size, and it's a universal app, so it'll also play on your iPhone 3GS and iPhone 4S, as well as the first iPad, the iPad 2, and the iPod Touch. So it's already been tweaked to version 1.0.1, and it looks like a really good game. And again, it's only $7. There are in-app purchases. You can buy, I guess, to get ahead. For example, you can buy a bag of 20,000 gold for 99 cents, a bag of 150,000 gold for $5. I personally don't like the concept of buying your way to fame on one of these games. But anyways, it looks like a cool game, and if you're a gamer, you should check it out. Okay, as we're in the holiday season and post Thanksgiving, there's a lot of sales, and TheVerge.com had an interesting sale to identify, and that is that the retail store TJ Maxx had a special sale where the iPad 2, the entry price one of $499, was $100 off, at $399.99. So that's 20% off. So that's pretty amazing. I bet you a lot of stores, since the iPad 2 is so popular, are doing discounts on the iPad just to get people into the store. So I bet you, that we're going to see more of that. So if you're in a hunt for an iPad 2 and willing to get the entry-level one, I would look around, because I bet you there's going to be more of these sales where stores, big retail stores, maybe TJ Maxx, I don't know who else, maybe Walmart, maybe Best Buy, are going to try to get you in the door by offering you a limited quantity of below-price iPads. So keep on the lookout, and you'll score yourself a discounted iPad. Okay, so one of the more pathetic stories that I've seen this week comes from GigaOM. Now, we all know BlackBerry and its maker RIM has been struggling, particularly since they haven't really innovated, and the BlackBerry devices are losing ground to both Android and the iPhone. Well, this is kind of a sad story. Their Playbook isn't selling well, and they have a whole millions of Playbooks that they're trying to get rid of. And I think Best Buy returned a whole bunch of Playbooks. That's the tablet that RIM was trying to sell to compete with the iPad. Well, GigaOM has a really bizarre story now. It says that RIM is offering device management for iOS and Android devices. And it's a pretty bizarre article. It says that, starts off saying, if you can't beat iOS, this is in GigaOM on November 29th, 2011 by Ryan Kim. It says, if you can't beat iOS and Android devices in the market, you might as well secure them. That seems to be the stance of Research in Motion, which is launching a device management and security service for IT departments called BlackBerry Mobile Fusion that builds off of his BlackBerry Enterprise servers. So basically, RIM is trying to sell what it considers to be its corporate strength, which is corporate security, and have it work on rival platforms through a product that can serve BlackBerry devices as well as smartphones and tablets running on operating systems from Apple and Google. So GigaOM points out it's an important bid to remain relevant in bring your own device world. So basically this would, according to the article, allow RIM to utilize its BlackBerry Enterprise servers to help IT managers oversee their various devices from Android and Apple. So I don't know. I mean, this is kind of, well, I guess you have to do something to hold on to your dying little empire of RIM BlackBerry devices. And so what you hope the IT managers do is use your device to manage iPhones and iPads and Android devices. I mean, frankly, I think it's a little bizarre. And as the RIM BlackBerry dies out, I think a lot of managers are going to be relying on maybe services from Microsoft or from Apple or Google. So, very strange story. Now, ever since the iPad first came out, some people have been griping that it doesn't have a keyboard and that they don't like the virtual keyboard. And, of course, you can use an external keyboard by Bluetooth and also by, I think, USB also connection. But one of the annoying things is that people still gripe about it. Well, various people have come out with different gadgets to try to, make the iPad have a built-in keyboard. And one of the things they've tried to do is have like these overlays that go over the screen over the bottom half. Well, Mashable had a story and basically recommends such a device called the TouchFire. And they claim they have a question, is it the iPad's ultimate typing experience? And this story was by Sarah Kessler on Mashable. And it looks like a pretty cool device. It costs $45, and they claim to have a secret patent pending sauce that allows you to have a sort of a see-through keyboard that goes as an overlay. And it says here, instead of inserting a string of babble into your prose, as usually happens when you rest your fingers on the iPad's keyboard, TouchFire doesn't set off a single key when you rest your fingertips on the product. Its defined keys make typing while looking away from the screen possible, and its silicon body is impossibly thin and flexible solution to a problem that usually solved with clunky plastic add-ons. So it's pretty thin. So the guy who's the co-founder, Stephen Isaac, says everyone else, when they think about a keyboard, they try to replicate what a mechanical keyboard is. And I guess this concept was first done on Kickstarter. That's that website where you can raise money, and if people think you have a good idea, they can buy the product ahead of time. So apparently this guy Isaac, he doesn't have a mechanical engineering background. He said he worked on operating system for one of the first tablet-like devices in the 80s and 90s, and he helped develop Internet Explorer 1.0. So he recruited another guy, and anyway, so they built this sort of rollable, I guess you can roll up this keyboard and put it away, and that magnets on the keyboard side snap into place to type and snap into the iPad case for storage. So it uses magnets to secure itself, but it's very thin silicone, so you can roll it up. So I don't know, it might be a pretty good way to solve the problem of having typing on the screen and do touch typing where you feel the raised keys. So you might want to check it out. It's called TouchFire. So check it out on Kickstarter. Okay, so it looks like 4G service, that's the ultra-fast cell phone service, may finally be coming to iOS devices, and a story in MacRumors.com seems to indicate that it's going to be coming to the iPad in Japan. And the story in MacRumors says, I guess on November 30th, that LTE iPad coming to Japan next summer. And the story was in the Nikkei Business Reports. And basically it says that the Japanese carrier NTT Docomo has reached an agreement with Apple that will see an LTE-enabled version of the iPad next summer. So obviously these are going to be coming, and the question is, are there going to be chips that are small enough and don't use enough battery to do so? Now, it's going to be probably easier to get the 4G service in the iPad because the iPad's much bigger than the iPhone, and the iPad has a tremendous battery that can last 10 hours. So, you know, I think if we're going to see LTE chips, that we might see them first in iPad 3 or iPad 4. So it's very exciting. I think as we get faster and faster cell phone service, people might be tempted to cut the cord in terms of internet connections at home. So we'll have to see. Now here's a kind of bizarre story in electronista.com. It says that prosecutors in England are getting HP touchpads and not iPads for a court pilot. And this is kind of bizarre. You know, basically the prosecutors in England are going to test tablet devices in court. And as part of a project, they gave 35 HP touchpads to keep court documents digitally during cases to, I guess, various prosecutors. Now, you know, this could have been just a very bad purchasing decision. Some people maybe, like, you know, maybe some enterprise prosecutor's office had a deal with HP and bought the touchpad. But as you know, the touchpad has been completely discontinued. So this is kind of a stupid thing to purchase discontinued products. But maybe they got a good deal on it. And I don't know, I wonder how many other organizations made the mistake of purchasing either the BlackBerry Playbook or the HP touchpad. It's kind of sad. I mean, if I was an enterprise, the only item I would buy really is that as a tablet is the iPad, because at least you know it's going to be around. Okay, if you are looking for some interesting apps that you've never heard about, you might want to check out a link to a blog I spotted, or a website I spotted called inspiredm.com, and they had an article entitled 10 Stylish iPad Apps You Probably Never Heard About. So I can't vouch for any of these, but definitely I've never heard of these apps. One is called Timex iPad, and it's a internet radio iPad app. So if you're looking for something like that, you might want to check that out. There's another app called City Geo Tweets, where you can visualize the location of tweets on a map. I've heard of the third one. It's called InstaMap, and it's a photography app that redefines browsing Instagram photos, so it works with Instagram. There's something called ISO Sketch, which is described as unleash your inner gridded side by effortlessly drawing on an angled isometric grid, creating beautifully precise geometric artwork. So it's a sketching app. The fifth one is called Nalden, and it's a lifestyle for digital natives. So the app includes stories supported by videos, photos, wallpapers, and must have apps. I don't know. So these are definitely kind of strange apps that I've never heard before, some involving Facebook. So check it out. It's at inspiredm.com, and I'll have a link in the show notes. Okay, thanks for listening. That's episode 83, December 5th, 2011. See you next week.
This has been a Max Future production.